funny friends, my funny friends, my funky friends now. My funny friends, my funny friends, my funky friends now.
Starring Drew Harrison and Will Abeles.
Hey guys, how you doing? We are back for another episode of My Funny Friends. Riding solo in the hosting duties this week. Our beloved Will Abeles is out with a little tum ache, so shout out to Will. Hope you're feeling better, buddy. But it's okay because we have a fantastic guest lined up for this episode. Someone who is killing it as a producer in the Nashville scene, and recently took her talents to produce Chris Gethard's beautiful Cononymous Festival in New York this past weekend. So we're definitely going to have to talk about that. It is the very awesomely producing person, amazing to be around, Kaylee Wilson. How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you? That was
Good.
Very flattering intro.
Oh, thank you. I try.
Can I say something about Will's absence really quick?
Please. We welcome that.
He texted me around lunchtime and asked me if I could Venmo him for some shows he's been on because he wanted to buy lunch. And then you texted me that there was a case of food poisoning. And I'm just wondering if I'm directly responsible for
You did this.
that.
You did this. You caused this. Secretly, you caused this.
It was willed into the universe.
Yeah. I wonder what he, you always want to ask. You always want to be like, what did it?
Yeah.
What got you?
Where was it? What mistake did you make?
Yeah.
Food poisoning's awful though. It's one of the worst things.
Because you can't stop it. There's nothing you can do. You can try to stay hydrated, but it's going to come back up. So
yeah.
It's just,
full evacuation of the system.
Everybody out. I love that Dan St. Germain joke where he talks about his stomach being a bar at the end of the night, and Evan Williams comes in and ruins everything. So they got to be like, all right, everyone out. I opened for him in Wilmington and asked him to do that joke, and I guess he hadn't done it in a while, and he messed it up. And it just on stage, he's like, "Damn it, Drew! I knew I shouldn't have done that joke."
But it probably was so perfect for you.
I was cracking up in the back. It was fantastic.
As someone who just exclusively stays in the back, seeing someone fuck up a joke is my favorite part of the show.
I knew it. I
don't want to see you do well.
Yeah. Except for when it's your shows, though, right? You want people to do well in this? Chaos.
No, they can do. I want them to do well, but I do like to see them stumble a little.
That's fair.
I don't know what that says about me, but
well, I mean, especially comics need to be humbled from time to time.
Yeah. So,
the universe has a way
frequently.
Of doing it. Yeah. So what got you into wanting to produce comedy of all things?
I kind of broadly give this answer whenever I'm asked that, but like insanity, mostly.
Yeah.
I was completely unaware of like the industry as an industry, but I was definitely going through a lot of shit in my personal life and my marriage and all that kind of stuff. And I was spending all of my money at Zanies. Like it was my escape from my life, just being a consumer. And then I got really sucked into podcasts of just comics talking to comics. Now I know that's what this is, but I don't love those podcasts anymore. But when you're on the outside, it's so interesting. It's so fascinating to like hear about the process and stuff.
That's so good to hear you say that, though, because the deeper I get into comedy, the less I want to listen to podcasts.
Yeah, because it's just like if you're an accountant listening to an accountant podcast, you're like, okay, we get it.
Yeah.
So now I'm a little more picky and choosy about like depending on the guest. But at that time I was listening to a lot of small podcasts. It was like Blair Saki had a podcast at the time called How to Be a Beefy Woman. It was before she popped. It was before she
That's
was
fantastic.
a name that we all know now.
Beefy woman.
And
I mean, I
I was
too
the
feel like a
lunatic,
beefy woman,
a
so I might
beefy
need to check
woman.
that out. Yeah.
It was primarily the conversations were based on like how much she loves steak.
Same girl.
It's a great concept. But I was like the weirdo fan who like created the Facebook fan page. Having no idea. In my head, these were like huge comics. And I didn't
Yeah.
realize their numbers were not as
What they were.
big.
Yeah.
I had them up on a platform, but it was like that whole like I guess class, if you will. It was Blair, it was Rosebud Baker, it was Andrew Collins. It was like all of them.
Yeah.
And they were like kind of like a cliquey thing that was happening in New York, which just led to bigger and bigger names. And they would mention a name, I'd go find that person. They would mention, And so I was just like consuming it like crazy. And then I ultimately reached out to Brad Sativa and I was like, hey, like I don't want to be a comic. I want you to know like that from the get. Like I'm not trying to be up there with you guys, but like I have all these other skills. Like what can I bring to the table? Like what do you guys need? Because I branched out from Zanies and then I started going to mics and I started going to local shows. No one knew me. I was just lurking in the back.
Just hanging out.
And I just loved the weirdo scene. Like I loved all of it. And so I finally approached him about it. We went and had lunch one day and I was just like, what can I be doing? And I was still working my 9-to-5 job in commercial real estate. And he at that time had just started booking don't tell locations.
Okay.
And my background's in real estate. Like I knew locations, I knew business owners, I knew like I had all that backside of it.
Yeah.
So we started by like approaching people for don't tell shows. And then Diskin was one of those that we approached. And the tactic when we went into it was like, this could be a don't tell one-off, or we could make it monthly. And they agreed to it.
That's
so
fantastic.
That's now.
I mean, that was one of the first shows I did when I got here. So that's awesome.
Yeah. It's one of the longest, it's my longest running show for sure. And what I have found with producing is with longevity comes ease. It's my easiest show. It sells itself out. Yeah. Like the work I have to put into it is so much lower. And every time I start a new one, it's like,
here we go again.
Will anybody show?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I just wanted to be in the world, and I didn't even know what that looked like. I didn't even know what a producer was. I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
And he taught me a lot of what I know, and then I kind of ran with it and inserted myself into other conversations. And now I'm still doing a show this Friday that hasn't sold any tickets. But coming off of a crazy weekend that sold out. So it's
right.
Yeah. And you kind of learn to love like I don't know. For me, it's so much more like the people and the hang and the camaraderie and like comedians are every kind of person, and you kind of get to just hang out with all of them, and you're quick to identify the ones you want to hang out with more.
Well put. And you can also find out that some comics are more than one person.
We have a few some characters.
Yeah. So I gotta ask, this was my master plan the whole time, to get you on the podcast, to ask you, what does Dewey Comedy mean?
Oh, the name?
Yes.
That is the town I grew up in Arizona.
There we go. You could have given me 100 guesses.
It's as simple and as stupid as that.
You could have given me so many guesses, I wouldn't have come to that. So
what did you kind of suspect it was?
I didn't know if it was like a maybe like a loved grandfather nickname or something, like I had no clue. No idea.
I probably would have maybe considered naming a son that if I had ever had a son,
Okay. I mean, that's a cool name, Dewey.
but I took that option off the table 9 years ago when I had the first child.
Fair. That's fair. You're like, never again.
So maybe it would have been a dog name at some point.
Yeah. That was The
It was,
Rock's nickname from his parents growing up.
oh yeah,
So that's cool. Or his grandma. His grandma called him Dewey.
really?
Yeah.
It wasn't for that.
Okay. That was another guess of mine. She's like, she's just the biggest Dwayne Johnson fan ever.
Can you imagine if this was just like posters of
Well, I'm
him
waiting for
in
you to
all
just pull it
phases
down
of
and
his
it's just
life?
you're like, how did you know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think I wanted a nod to Arizona. I love being from Arizona, and I love knowing that I'll never move back there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'll
I
get
don't
you.
know.
I get those vibes from North Carolina,
Yeah.
like to honor it and
Yeah.
be proud of where you came from.
Mhm.
So that's good. So how
Yeah.
were the first few times at Diskin when you walked into that meeting and it became a monthly? How'd that go from there?
Yeah, we kind of pitched it as either, and I don't know that we ever did it as a don't tell. I think we
Okay.
went straight into just making it a monthly thing. They were open to having an event, and I feel like they did pretty well. We had the benefit of, granted, this was pre-COVID, this was 2019, but we had the benefit they have built-in marketing already. And so they were able to push it to all of their followers and their email list and all of that kind of stuff. And before COVID, our capacity was actually higher. I think we were doing like 50 seats.
Okay.
And then COVID happened, and we obviously stopped it for a little while.
Yeah.
And then we did a scaled back, socially distanced, like worked through all those like phases of reintegration.
Yeah. Were y'all ever outside?
They were,
I can't remember.
and they were one of those yeah, I did some park shows.
Okay. Oh yeah.
I mean, I think skipping, like, Diskin was definitely the first one, and that was the only one I was doing. And then I would help him find some locations sometimes. We used my backyard one time for a don't tell.
Okay.
Pre-COVID, that was during the NBC. NBC does the minorities, and like, so it's like women, people of color.
It used to be stand up for
diversity.
Yeah, stand up for diversity, but I don't know what it's called now because they changed the name because they're like, that sounds terrible.
Yeah. So that was happening. And so we did the don't tell in my backyard. And like crazy people were on it that are now, like Danielle Perez was on it. Oh, wow. And she's like huge. She's been on TV now, like, and I'm like, also, she was in my backyard one time.
She did this show.
I think that's like a cool part of comedy too, is like, you do get to see a literal trajectory for the people that are going to make it. Yeah. You've seen them at every phase, and that's so fun. And I'm sure there's assholes among us, but like a lot of them just stay like very connected to the people that they started with. Yeah.
Luckily, the number of jerks I've met has been very few. So that's good.
Yeah. Weirdos, but not everyone. Like it's a very specific community. So yeah, we were doing some one-off weird locations. Then COVID happened. Dewey Comedy didn't exist before COVID. COVID happened.
Just doing like under the Diskin banner at like Comedy Diskin beforehand.
We were doing, like, Brad was doing like Music City Productions or Music City Comedy or something like that. Gotcha. Is what we were kind of using. Okay. And then COVID happened. We started doing Zoom. Brad did a couple one-offs. Like, he interviewed I should remember her name.
Porn star?
A porn star.
AJ Applegate.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess. I guess that's her name.
You've seen her maybe.
But I've heard of the name, maybe,
Yeah.
Just from that interview, really.
So we did some of those and kind of That's all I've ever seen too, for
Mm-hmm,
sure.
mm-hmm.
But like, so some of that kind of started happening where we were like, oh, like some of these people in New York are like anyone can do a Zoom show.
Yeah.
And so I started Comedy Unmasked. So clever on
Oh,
Zoom. And then Will Abels got wind of that. And so we
R.I.P.
started doing some, he would host them. And then he decided that he wanted to record an album.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, sure.
Let's do
I
it.
know nothing. I will
Like, yeah,
make
yeah, yeah,
up.
yeah.
Yeah. Y'all nod and smile. And that's when I made up Dewey because I had to make up a website to
Yeah.
like put the stuff up on.
Yeah.
And then the park show started and it just we were doing it guerrilla style in the splash park.
The splash
Did
park.
you did you do any of those
I don't
ones?
think I did.
So downtown Nashville has that big park right on the riverfront,
Okay.
right by
Oh
the
yeah,
pedestrian
yeah,
bridge.
yeah.
Well, there's a huge, beautiful amphitheater with a huge, beautiful stage. Great. Uh, First of all, wasn't open, but also it was like $600 an hour to rent it or something. And I was like, not quite making that much money with my shows yet.
Jesus.
However, there's a splash pad right next to it that has built-in amphitheater style concrete seating. And then in the bottom, it would like fill with water and have the fountains and kids would play in it. They shut it down for the whole summer because of COVID. They
There you
never
go.
turned the water on.
There you go.
So it was like this built-in bowl. It was below street level. So cops patrolling the park couldn't see us
That's awesome.
because we were sunken down.
Look at
We
that.
had a beautiful view of the skyline at night. And it was
That's
safe because it was
amazing.
outside.
Yeah.
And like so many random, that was weekly at one point.
I don't know why, but it's making me think of that scene in Pitch Perfect where they go to like the empty pool to like do the battle or whatever they did. I don't know what you call it.
Never seen it.
If I've seen a movie that someone hasn't seen, that's terrible because I'm so bad at watching movies. I haven't seen 2 or 3, but I've seen the first
I'm bad at movies with singing
Okay.
in them.
one. See, that's fair. I'm bad with it. I hate watch Riverdale at this point because I watched the first few seasons that I loved, and now it's just terrible. But I'm invested, and I got to see how it is.
Is that
Thankfully,
like the
this is
Archie
the
and
last-
Jughead thing?
Yeah, but they've turned it into a CW teener drama. So
I'll never watch that, but I loved the comics.
yeah, that's why I started watching it. And every season they have a musical.
Oh, yeah.
So we always have to start it, and they start singing, and I turn to Laura. I'm like, "Is this the musical?" And she's like, "Maybe."
Yeah. Yeah. For not liking theater kids, I really got involved with a weird group of people.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, because we're right there. We're just one.
You're adjacent for sure.
And I hate it so much.
Yeah, but I think those Zoom shows gave me access to so many people. It was like
people,
I was able to like network, and anyone would jump on a show. Like we had the Rosebuds and the Blairs and we had all of them on shows because they're like, I'm just like, we don't know who you are, but we'll talk to you, which just opened lines of communication for me so that I could reach out to people like them and adjacent, like once I got doing shows back in person again. So
yeah,
I actually got a lot from COVID.
I was about to say, how did you take what you learned in that and the connections you made, and then when things opened back up, how'd you just kind of like hit the ground running? Because you did.
I think I was able to be like, I was able to name drop a little bit and be like, look, I've worked with these people, if they only knew how insignificantly, but like I was able to be like, hey, I'd like do these things. And I think my business background and my real estate background, my pitch when I go into new locations is very like, I can make you money.
Professional.
And it's very professional, but it's like, let me introduce an event into your space. You're going to draw in new people that have never been in your space that may end up being lifelong customers. You're going to have sales on a night that's otherwise dead for you. Like there's a lot of different like ways I pitch it depending on
Where you're at.
the space.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's
And
got to be
they're
refreshing.
open to it.
I was about to say it's got to be refreshing on their end, coming from a business aspect, like you having
Yeah.
being organized as opposed to some new comedian just being like, "Hey, can we do shows here?"
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. And like more recently now, I have a lot of comics coming to me and be like, "Hey, can I do a show with you?" Meaning,
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing, but you have a basic platform that I can, and I've gotten kind of happily into a position where like, yeah, go find, if you have a spot, I will have CC me on the email. I will jump in. I will interject my pitch. I will give them my credits, if you will. I will give them my
It adds some credibility
resume.
to a comic trying to get
Exactly. But I don't want to book it, and I don't I
Won't
don't
have
want to
to be
have to
there.
be there.
Yep.
And so that's been kind of a cool evolution that's happening now with a couple things that it's like, and I think it's great for the comics too, especially ones that have never done it, to be like, okay, well, this is what goes into producing, and I can give you access to everyone who's emailed me their availability, but like, I'll do a final sign off on who they book for the
Yeah.
most part.
I mean, your
Because I
name's
do
attached.
want, yeah, exactly. If my name's attached to it, please, let's not get some racist asshole. Let's not get someone with a reputation for X, Y, and Z. So far,
That's
that hasn't been a problem.
that's how Empire falls. You work so hard to build
Yeah,
something up, you work with the wrong people, it can crumble pretty quick.
yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you take that into I know you've been involved in some podcasts now, so you've kind of gotten into that world. So what made you want to be like, is it going back to what got you in it in the first place and your love for like podcasts and comics and things like that?
Kind of. I started my own podcast during COVID, all about bread. I have since taken it all down. But I started it with my best friend, and like we were only seeing each other. So we baked a new bread every week and then we talked about it.
Okay.
But what ultimately ended up happening is we also just like unloaded all of our trauma in our past, and in retrospect, probably didn't need to go public with a lot of that information. But I liked it. I liked the hang. It was a forced hang. We got to, see each other every week. But yeah, so now doing I'm Fine, It's Fine with Amber Autry, that was purely her. She asked me. And because of who she is someone that I met during COVID over Zoom. She was coming to my Zoom open mics. That's the first time I ever saw her, knew about her. That's how hard she worked. She was doing Zoom open mics to 7 people.
The dog agrees.
Yeah, he's really into it.
Yeah, it's like she's putting in that work, dude.
She was, but like there's
she's I if anyone deserves to make it, she's very high on that list.
She's very high, and like she has carved her own path, and like from my standpoint, one, I love her. I love what she represents. I love her comedy. I love her as a human, exactly. But like, yeah, I want to be attached to someone who's like actively working her ass off for this, and not someone phoning it in.
For sure.
I want to be with the people that are, that they believe in what they're doing, what they're saying on stage. And it's very hard. Our scene's pretty small relatively. To find someone as authentic as her on and off stage is pretty hard.
Yeah.
And so like I think she's a great example for people to watch. So she asked me to do it, and I was like, yeah. Again, not super well versed. I had my whole setup. I had a studio in my home. I had all the stuff, and I sold my home and got rid of everything. And I was like, I knew my system. I had to learn a whole new podcast system, recording system. We're still trying to figure out the audio. We now have a really beautiful space for it, and it's still just like,
such a great space.
what are we doing?
No, I
So
hear you.
I'm really excited about it though. Like all of the feedback we've gotten from people because of the nature of it
Yeah,
has been so positive. People are like sending her messages and like I wasn't afraid to try therapy after I listened, and
that's
a lot of
fantastic.
people, you were on it and
Yeah.
people loved your episode. Like people were
Oh, that's good.
like talking about like anger was a big one. I don't know if she
Um,
showed you that message, but someone emailed us. She was like, "Oh my God, like the anger, like people are just like feeling it." And there's
that's
like
awesome. Yeah, no,
funny
I have to ask her
aspects,
about it.
but also like sincere aspects. And
Yeah.
so,
It
yeah,
is
I'm really
refreshing
excited
when
to
you
be
can
part
be
of it.
sincere as a comic because we're not
Yeah.
sincere. Most of
Well,
90% of
right.
our day, we are trying to be funny and cut up and make light of a situation. So it is nice when we do get to
Yeah.
sit down and talk and actually be real for a second.
It is. It's a really vulnerable space. And like so far, most people have been like open to the process of it
Yeah.
because it is comedy is such a coping mechanism,
Yeah.
as we have found as a through line with everyone so far, is that like I make jokes because I'm uncomfortable. I make jokes because I had to diffuse feelings in my home. I make jokes because my parents were like we're it's all of us mask with humor. Even I did it, even though I'm not like on stage, I'm drawn to it. It's my
Yeah.
reaction. It's how I like dismiss things. And so people are actually getting to talk about like what they're dismissing, what they're using comedy to maybe not hide from, but just like as their form of coping or healing. So it's been really cool to just like be in the room for those conversations, really.
And that's awesome too, because it's very difficult because we me and Will have trouble with this too, because we just finding a refreshing theme for a podcast. Like kudos
Mm-hmm.
for y'all for finding something that's new and people want to listen to, and that's I mean that's the whole battle right there. So that's awesome.
Yeah,
And
there's a
I don't
lot
know
of
what y'all got planted in that room. That just as soon as you sit down in that chair, you just are like blah, blah, blah. I don't know if it's been other guests how that is or not, but I was just
you're the
I
first
want
one
to
in
talk
that
about
room.
everything. Oh, okay. Well, whatever you got
It
planted
was
or
you.
something. Thanks.
I think it's Melanie and Amber just creating a really safe
Yeah, for
space.
sure.
Like they make you feel comfortable. Like, and we're very transparent when we're like sending out the email, like these are the things that might come up. Be willing to talk as much or as little about any of it. Like we're not here to be like, tell us the worst thing that's ever happened to you.
Right, right, right.
Sometimes it just comes out organically and you're like, oh,
That's a good one.
heavy.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I can imagine
um
just being in the room. Sometimes you can feel the weight
mhm.
of the situation.
Yeah, but you just get to be in awe of people because like I feel like everyone's gone through trauma, and it's pretty inspiring to be like, oh look, they're on stage like making this heal other people by like I was like the 2 hours a day that I was at a comedy show, I wasn't thinking about the shit in my life. It's so good for people as an escape. And so I don't know. I just feel
Especially how
really lucky to be
weird
in the
just
room.
everything is nowadays. Just to be able to shut
Hmm.
it down for a little bit, it's amazing.
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
why I get more upset about hecklers and people that yell out stuff during the show is mainly being upset for them that they weren't able to shut it off.
Right. Right. They can't get
You
out of their
couldn't be in this
own
moment with
way.
everyone. Yeah, it sucks.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
let's fast forward a little bit to this past weekend. How did you get involved with Mr. Chris Gethard? I've got to see him live, and he is amazing and fantastic. And I know New York is your
He
home away
is.
from home, so I'm sure you were thrilled to be up there for the weekend producing comedy. So
Yeah.
yeah, tell me how all that came to be.
I tell people I like really hot guys and really nerdy comics. Like like I'm attracted to two opposite ends of the spectrum. Like the weirder, kookier the comedy is, like
Yeah.
I'm in.
Well, Chris Gethard
Alt
knocks
scene
out both
is
those
that.
boxes. So
um yeah, so it's like I was a fan of his going way back to his like public access days,
okay.
and I would stream it before it was a thing. Yeah, I just really, really liked him.
Yeah, he's
And
fantastic.
I followed his career. I followed, like bought his albums, got his book release, all of, his book release, his HBO special, Career Suicide. Like there was just something very like, again, authentic, vulnerable. Like all of those things are really interesting to me. Like I love comedy where I like believe everything you're saying. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's a real thing. You're not making up some bullshit. You're not telling one-liners. Like this is a real experience for you. That's the comedy that seems to be the most impactful for me.
Yeah.
And so I was just following his career. And then I started listening to Beautiful Anonymous from day one. Like it what I loved it. I loved the concept of it. And I think when he'll say this, but when he started it, it was expected to be like a bunch of weirdo fans calling in, being silly. Because the premise of the show was like, anyone can call me anonymously. You can talk about whatever you want. I cannot hang up for an hour. I have to listen to you. So you would think that would just be the most goofy, off the wall, people
Yeah.
farting for
Like I
an
got
hour,
something
like
to
all
talk
of the
about.
weird. And he thought it was truly going to be like this hilarious podcast. And there were a couple silly episodes, like all about
Yeah.
pooping and all about like these really weird things. But it evolved because of the nature of who he is, his own openness about mental health and all of the things he's gone through, into a very sincere, people telling their coming out stories, people talking about
Oh wow.
sexual abuse, people talking about all of these really, really genuine, real conversations. And it just like kept growing. Like the community of people kept growing and sprinkled in with like hilarious people talking about hilarious, like it was such a mix. And you get to, it's still going every
Yeah.
week. But you get to hear so many points of view, so many perspectives. Like during the election, like he had a Trump voter on, and like you got to hear like she was able to like just have a conversation about her viewpoint without fighting and like
The
you know what I mean?
anger.
Like
Yeah.
you get to hear all of these experiences. I know one that stuck with me was like a Black queer woman who grew up in Appalachia. Like that's so many factors of like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
that's a different life experience than I'll ever have.
Right.
And now I get to hear it. So because he created this whole community of people that are like accepting and open and all of this stuff with comedy sprinkled in. Fast forward last year, like we had been in contact, we had emailed a few times. I had gone back and forth with the person that books his tours, and like because I really just wanted to get him down here for like a headlining show. I had seen him at Zany's, but like his audience, like it's not the same audience necessarily. Like he has a very indie mindset. He loves DIY clubs and cultures, and like I was like, he's perfect for like a one-off headliner show. It never came to happen, but we had been in communication. And then when I met him in person in New York during New York Comedy Fest, I was just like, hey, if you
Hello.
need anybody, I know
Yeah.
this festival's coming up, like tap me in.
Yeah.
And then they announced the dates of it, and I was like, I'm here, tap me in. And then ultimately I got in touch with Marianne Ways, who is such a badass producer, and like she produced Two Dope Queens and
Oh,
HBO's,
wow.
but like
Yeah.
she's fucking so good, and she was so giving and like, yeah, like yes, I need help, but also like here's access to all of my documents, all my spreadsheets. This is how we're budgeting. This is how we're doing lineups. Like I just got to like
Showed you
absorb
so
all
much.
of that.
Yes.
And that is so valuable because like I
Yeah.
was like, you don't need to pay me anything. I just
You
want to
just did.
be there. I just want to help. Like it was so cool. So I just like I worked on getting some like donations and sponsorships, and I worked on the social media as I could, and like I had a very, very small role in it, but then I got to just be part of the entire weekend. And
Yeah.
that was so interesting too, seeing it, because it's like festival style. So you're like coordinating all of the comics, all the lineups, all the load in, load out. We had like Caitlin Cook. She's a musician. She had to come in for soundtrack. Just like
Past
all the
guest
nuances
Kaylee
of
Cook.
behind the scenes. Yeah, I love Caitlin. But yeah, Roy Wood Jr. Friday night, hot off the White House press conference, like, or dinner. Like,
Yeah. Oh, which was
what is my
fantastic, by
life?
the way. I never watched those, but I watched his. Oh,
Me
it was
neither.
great.
And I was like, oh, this is so good.
Yeah, I'll just give him the Daily Show already. What are we doing here? What are we doing here?
Yeah, but that was so interesting too, just like being in the back, being in the green room and just they're shooting the shit. He like asked me, he's like, what's going on with Tennessee? Like, what's up with Nashville? Are people still moving there? And I was like, ah! this is so
actually,
do you want the truth or do you want my politically correct answer?
We have prepared a statement.
We could use some improvements as a community.
We're open to notes.
We could anyway.
That's
yeah,
awesome. So it was a nice mix of like, because he did his podcast live, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so there was live podcast recordings, which is all done through Earwolf, which is a serious company now.
Okay.
Also, like that whole experience, Anita and Jared are his producers, and again, just like information, like watching them work, just so cool. Couldn't be kinder people. That was the other part of it that was just so impressive. The takeaway from the entire weekend was just how kind the people that he attracts are. Nice. And the people he booked and the comedians he booked were so good. And like, I've loved so many of them, but obviously I've not seen many of them live. And so it was like, really surreal. I think the really surreal moments for me were like being in the sound booth and like giving Roy the light. Like,
that's fantastic.
Like, I'm like, what is my life? Like,
yeah,
this is so...
I was gonna ask you what your favorite part of the weekend is, but I don't have to.
I mean, that was just a really surreal moment. Kyle Kinane was added last minute, and I love him so much. I love him so much. And Marianne had pulled me aside. She's like, hey, like we've already talked about it, but he's gonna need the light like tenfold. Like he's gonna run it. He needs to be like thrown off the sides of the stage. Like you're gonna have to be really intentional. And so I took that as my opportunity to be like, hey Kyle, Kaylee, so great to meet you. I'm gonna be the one lighting you, and this is how it's gonna work. And like he was so receptive. It was so good.
Like, oh, okay, yeah.
And then after that show, after the night he was on, was a 90s party, like it's 1999 dance party.
That's fantastic. That
they hold at the Bell House monthly, and it just happened to fall on this weekend, so we just meshed it all. And when I tell you, because Kyle Kinane is like a huge pop punk guy. Yes. He loves pop punk, which is
near and dear to my heart. Yes,
it's our era for sure.
Yes.
There's some seating along like the one wall, and everyone's like dancing, and he just had like, I think he was drinking like a Miller, I don't know what he was drinking, some beer, and he's just like chilling and bobbing his head, and I was like, hey, this is a dance party, I think you need to be out there. And he was like, yeah, he's like, I don't know if I just want to chill or if I want to vibe. And I was like, you want to? And like, he just like rushed to the center, and it was like so beautiful. I was like, I can't believe. He's like, you got to come with me. And I was like, okay. And I like followed him, and then he started going, and I like excused myself really fast. I was like, there you go. That's like, we got you out there. That my job is done. So he was so cool. Just
that's awesome. Yeah.
He was everything you wanted him to be.
I got to meet him. He came through Dead Crow, and I think I've told this story on the podcast before, but we were out back hanging out at our open mic, and he came walking by, just dropped by on open mic night. And I just happened, I was like, I fanboyed out and forgot the filter. I was like, that's Kyle Kinane. And he heard me, and he's like, yeah, it is. Just kept going.
He's
I was like, that's fantastic.
He's so cool.
Yeah.
I was like, this is, I don't know, just as a comedy like nerd, as a fan, it's like, of course I want to be doing this. Like, that's the kind of stuff that like reinvigorates you after shows where you're like, because I knew I had Crazy Gnome like the next, like I got back Monday, I had Crazy Gnome Tuesday.
Kicking the nuts.
And I was like, whoa, I can't believe I got to go home to this. But like, also, I'm excited to go home to this so that I can like
Use what
put
you
this
learned and
energy
built
back
it.
into it.
Yes, for
Yeah.
sure.
My takeaway from this weekend, I loved everyone,
Mhm.
but I like the weird and I like the shocking
Yeah,
and
something new.
something new. Martin
Okay.
Urbano, I don't know
Okay.
how it's pronounced.
Yeah.
He was wildly bad in a good way. Like it was like so naughty
Okay.
and like this, I don't know how to explain it. And
It's something you
even
gotta
when
see.
when Chris brought him up, he apologized in advance. He goes,
That's the best.
this person is going to make you think he's a really horrible human. He's actually very sweet and wonderful.
I was hoping he was going to be like, he actually sucks.
He was, no, he was not wrong. It was like, you're just like, oh my God, he went there. He did it. He said the thing. It was really fun. I think, I mean, of that lineup too, I think Christy Cello's on this really cool trajectory right now. She's so unique and different, and she sings and she performs. She's got a one-man show on like off Broadway right now that Nicole Byers is producing. Like she's kind of like creating her own lane.
Yeah. Would you ever want to get into that? Like the one-person show producing?
I think they'd be really
Edinburgh?
interesting. Yeah, I mean, it was really fun. Sam Morrison.
Mm-hmm.
Sam Morrison.
Okay.
He did his one-man show. He like took it on the road before he took it to off Broadway and Fringe Fest. He like was touring with it.
Yeah.
He was one I met over Zoom doing and like the beauty of all that was like people are like, how do you get these people? I'm like, I was in their DMs. And once you get through once, you're in. So then you can be like, hey,
you got to rapport.
Yeah, you've got a back and forth. So when you hit them up again, they've had a conversation with you. Oh, they did a show with you. You're legit. Let's have a conversation.
Yep.
So he did his one-man show at the coffee shop at the Wedge Building.
That's fantastic.
And it was so good. And now he's been nominated for so many off-Broadway awards. And he's just like, it's like people were so responsive to it. And it's like, again, a beautiful, hilarious story, but has a lot of feeling because it's just one.
Yeah. Do you think that can rejuvenate some comics? Like maybe a comic that, you talk about the podcasts, like the getting the real. Like, do you think that's what's birthing more of these one-person shows? Like maybe taking the pressure off of being funny to talk about something that I really want to talk about?
Yeah, I think it gives you the freedom to have a more long form storytelling process where you get to you have a beginning, middle, and end. You're obviously hitting it with humor every X amount. You're staggering it through, but it does, if you're just by nature a storyteller, 10-minute sets aren't fulfilling after a while. I've got to assume Gary Goldman, he's so long form and like one story is 30 minutes, I love his Instagram because his stuff is so long that he has to post it in parts 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's just one thing. Whereas everyone else is putting up, 45-second bit or whatever. And he's got to be like part 1. You're like, you're just waiting because it's building and it's funny, but you don't actually get to the punchline until part 4 is dropped. Maybe tomorrow afternoon,
I mean, if he can get them hooked, that's smart. I did a
brilliant.
part 2 one time. I did part 1 and it took off on TikTok. Part 2,
no one came back for it.
No one cared. They're like, we got what we needed out of this. Right? It's fun.
Yeah. It's funny. Like it works for me because I'm like, oh wait, now I'm gonna turn my alerts on when Gary posts because I got to figure out what happened.
Yeah.
Anyway, I do think one-man shows are a good way to kind of get to have that full authenticity and the transparency, and you're not just like trying to pack as much as you can into a little set.
Yeah.
I imagine that's no different from like doing an actual full headlining hour. Like you have the opportunity to make that whatever you want it to be.
For
But
sure.
I don't know. I think
Yeah.
I enjoy them.
Yeah, I think there's something new that I don't
Mm-hmm.
mind. Like no, I'm not saying something new is always great, but I
Yeah,
enjoy. I'd rather watch a one person show than like a live podcast taping. I think.
I see that. I feel that. Um, yeah, live podcasts, like Chris did them, but the beauty of his is they're call-in.
Yeah,
So
so
you're
it's still
sitting
an
in the
element.
audience, but
Yeah.
it's still an anonymous caller. And like, he'll release the ones they recorded this weekend over a period of time, but like they were very interactive with the audience. He gives the audience a hashtag to use during the live recordings
Okay.
so they can like tweet in their questions. And
Nice.
then he'll be like, Sarah wants to know what you meant by blah, blah, blah.
That's
So then it
genius.
becomes
That's good call.
interactive.
Okay.
And he's
Because you always
also,
worry about that. Because I've pitched that before, like to
yeah,
emailing bookers, but we could do a live podcast taping, and then you get in your own head, you're like, what would we do?
just stare at each other and how you doing tonight? Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
Yeah,
smart. He
it
made
can go
that.
really clunky.
Yeah.
So yeah, he gets the fans engaged, and like this isn't the first time it's happened, but like people actually ended up on stage. So he's talking with the caller, this other random person's on stage talking with the caller, and then it just becomes this cool conversation that you're watching play out. So that kind of live podcast is great.
Yeah.
I don't know that I want to see two people sitting behind a table shooting the shit
Right.
that
I
I'd
think
rather
the
just
key,
listen to.
for sure, the key to the live podcast is what makes this fun. Is it a cool guest?
Yeah.
Are we just, like is half the festival we're involved in on stage with us? Like
Right.
what makes this okay than just two people, like you said, behind the table being like, so
Mm-hmm.
I had some bacon and eggs this morning.
Yeah.
Because that's why we
Yeah.
tried to reach out more with this podcast, is getting the other elements of comedy. Because we got stuck
Mm-hmm.
in that formula of a guest and being like, so tell us about your childhood and what that lead
How'd you
to.
start?
We're just like, we don't want to be that. So we're
Yeah.
trying to find different avenues and different things to talk about, because it's all been done a million times anyway. So
I think it's so important to just like be open to shifting and being like, okay, that really didn't work.
yeah.
Either the podcast itself, it's okay to scrap it. Like,
Yeah.
especially early
changed
in, you're
forms.
like, I don't have a million people I'm about to let down by being like, nah,
No, sorry.
but you'll get there.
Yeah.
You'll find the formula that
Yeah, for sure.
gets you there. I don't know. It's so hard.
Yeah, I mean, the important thing is we're having
like
fun
Chris
doing
is
it,
like,
because
yeah.
you can't do this and not enjoy it, because then it just becomes another job that you got to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want
You
that.
gotta want to like sit down and record every week, or however you're doing it. I don't know. It's one of those things. I think comedy's the same way. Shows are the same way. Like it is kind of an illness, though. Like
We got to do
I'll
it.
have horrible show. I'll be like, why am I here? Whoever trusted me to ever do this? And the next day, I'm like, okay, so next week, like
To the
you
next one.
just can't make it stop. Like this is a new development. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. But do you watch Succession?
We're behind, but
That's
we have
okay. You don't
watched
need
it.
to be
Yeah.
current for what I'm about to say. You know, Cousin Greg?
Yes.
Cousin Greg owns a bar in
Love
New
Cousin
York
Greg.
we love Cousin Greg. He owns a bar in New York with Justin Theroux.
Okay.
And I was like, I like went and looked it up randomly, just to be like, it's so fucking cool and divey, and there's this underground like below grade. And I was like, email him, Kaylee. Don't email him, Kaylee. You can't produce a show. What are you doing? Like, blah, blah, blah. And I emailed him. And we've got emails going back and forth now. And I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, I have no business being like, hey, I'm going to come produce a show in New York at a bar that I'll never be able to attend on a regular basis.
Hey, if
I'm
you got the
fully
people
going to
on the
have to find
ground.
someone else to run it. but that's how psycho I am. Like, I had that email sent the same day I had no tickets sold for Crazy Gnome, and I was like, so who cares? I'm still gonna do
But
it.
that's awesome that that's where your brain goes and not the opposite. Because there's a lot of times we get in our own heads and we're like, no success here, so I might as well just shut everything down
Yeah.
and not, like you talked about, shifting and pivoting, like,
Mhm.
because I feel like I've seen you do that a lot with your marketing and things like that. Like you went from doing, you were one of the early ones I saw switching from turning just a regular post into a reel, because that's
Yeah.
what you had to watch online. You had to have,
Yep.
and I feel like that's over now. So I feel like those aren't
Yeah.
booming as much. So I don't know
It's
what's the next thing.
constantly marketing yourself as a comic, marketing shows as like, it is ever evolving. It is, I find the hardest part about this is like figuring out what people are going to be attracted to. And then like you find that thing and you're like, okay, how do we repeat whatever? Just like, how do we recreate that? And sometimes it's just like, there's nothing you can do. You did nothing differently. Like sometimes shows will just like randomly get in the right cycle and suddenly you have 50 tickets sold and you're like, what? Like, there's not even like, no one on this lineup has credits. Like,
Yeah.
what is drawing? And that they're crazy fun. And then you bring someone really cool to town who should be drawing, and like no one show. And you're like, what is happening? What is happening?
Yeah. We've had that with Stone Cold Sober. Some of our best nights, we didn't have a lot of people in the audience, and some of our weirdest shows, we were sold out.
So
So
yeah.
it's like, what is going
Yeah.
on right now?
And like for me too, I have like, I take on the burden or the responsibility of being like, I told this business I was bringing them customers and I'm not performing, I'm not holding up my end of the deal. Like that's a lot of pressure on me. Regardless of how well the comics do, I'm like, I'm not doing my job of filling the seats, and I have to figure out how to like promo codes, buy one get one free, drink like every kind of tactic. And like I think locally the person that I've seen have the most independent success is Jay McNutt. I envy the shit out of the way he produces shows.
I've done 2 of his shows recently, and they were fantastic.
They're so fun and they're so good, and he's so fun, and like, and he does it like he's got music and DJ, like he's got cameras and and like, okay, like he gets it. He's got the mind to create this shit, and it's like I come back to my like, I want my own club so I can take people like him and have him run whatever the fuck he wants every night of the week. Like
Yeah.
you're like, you're so like, you just see people doing it and you're like, oh, I'm so jealous of that.
He's
But like,
killing it. Yeah.
I would feel like an idiot if I'm like I brought a DJ into one show and I'm like, this feels so corny to me. Like, it's not, you know what I mean? I'm like, who do I think I am?
Right. Well, I mean, you got to find your vibe as a producer too. So
I mean, everyone says my vibe is just being a weekend dad, so I don't know how that bodes for
guys
comedy.
got a plate of peanuts on all the tables. Be like, kids, it's dinner. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, yeah, chicken nuggets
Dad's
for
gonna
dinner
go play
tonight.
the ponies.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I love watching other people create stuff too, and I'm envious of it. But I'm also just like, so much respect that you've figured out a path. And your show, right, comes from you were doing that in North Carolina, a version of it.
Yeah. Brought it here.
And it's fun. Everyone talks about it.
Well, thank you. We have a good time.
Yeah. It's been a good run.
Yeah.
Right? Like people are still.
Yeah. May was a little rough, but we'll bounce back in.
That's the thing
April,
too. Like
April. What month is it? What are we in? May.
We're in May.
May was rough. June will be fine.
Yeah. I think that's what's so interesting too, is like last month, like, and you'll hear it'll be like across the scene, like everyone's like, shit, all the shows this month sucked, or all the shows this week have been dead. And then the next month, every single show on a Thursday sells out, and there's 7 of them, and you're like, this is crazy. Like we actually are selling out comedy shows all over town tonight. Yeah. It's very fascinating.
People in Nashville do enjoy being outdoors, so that steals some stuff sometimes.
We're competing with music and patio weather.
Yeah, so that's tough.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough. Well, who is Who's on your roster right now in Nashville? What venues, what shows do you run? Give
Oh,
us
right now.
what's the Dewey comedy lineup in Nashville looking like right now?
Um, right now we've got Diskin, of course, Always and Forever, Crazy Gnome Brewery in East Nashville, Red Bicycle in the Nations, Land of a Thousand Hills in West Nashville.
Beautiful place.
It's so pretty. I really want that show to be successful.
I think
It's
when people
such a
figure
good
out where that
space.
place is, I think it will.
It's tucked away in a weird
It
spot and
is.
parking's
And
weird, and
GPS
like
doesn't know what it is.
those are all factors in like doing a good show. We'll see. Like today I just sent out a big promotion to like all the residents with a promo code, and like I
Nice.
asked that like the apartment managers kind of get that out to all the tenants, but it's such a cool space, and like I would hate to see it
Yeah.
fizzle.
Nah, I hear you.
We'll see. But those are my four primary ones right now. And then like I was saying, like people are like kind of coming to me now. So like Brandon Gerald came to me, and he's got a show at Cafe Coco on Mondays.
Fun show.
And so we're just like running that through, ticketing it through my site and stuff, because that's the other thing that I found is figuring out ticketing, figuring out all that. The first few shows we did at Diskin were through Eventbrite, and they fuck you on the fees. Like there's
Yes,
it doesn't
I've
matter
heard
if you
nothing but
get
terrible things.
if you apply it to the person buying the tickets or not. It doesn't matter. You still the percentage they take is so insane, and it's like I run all the ticketing through my site now, and the percentage I pay is so low. So I pay a super low ticket percentage, and I pay a super low credit card processing fee to Stripe. I have a Stripe account. And like, I'm like, I can save you guys so much money just by running your tickets through my website.
Yeah.
And putting it like, I don't think my calendar has a lot of traction on my actual website, but having a ticket platform is very helpful.
Huge. Yes,
it has an app. You can scan them in. It's legit. Like everything's easy. And so he's running his show just through my platform. I'll like collaborate with him on posts, and when he puts stuff up, I'll repost it and share it. But again, that's one of those things, like I'm kind of hands off, like this is your baby, but we'll get it out there. Yeah. So that's happening now, and I've got another comic who's working on a Murfreesboro location. We'll see what comes of that. Yeah. So I'm open to being like, bring me your shows. Yeah. I'll help you get it out there and like let you run with whatever you want it to be. I would like to see more. I do like the shows that are not just showcase style. Like I like a running theme, or I like like you see these New York and LA shows, and they've got like really funny, crazy concepts, or like they're naked shows, or they're this show, like. And like, I don't think you always need a gimmick, but I think our scene doesn't really have, I think your show is the closest thing to like a gimmick.
And that's so funny because I've talked with Will about this on this podcast. Is in Wilmington, we went through a very weird phase that if you didn't have a gimmick, you didn't have audience.
Got it.
They weren't just coming for showcases. They weren't coming for obviously open mics. It was very weird. Like we had a very strong trust in the audience at the comedy club, not a strong trust with the audience in the indie scene.
Got it. Interesting.
Like if they were going to comedy, they were going to the comedy club. They weren't trying to give us a chance until we started putting shock collars around our neck. And
yes, I mean, there's a time and a place for that. Like I said, like I am most attracted to the weirdest comedy, just because it's not in my norm. You know what I mean?
I have a whole repertoire of weird shows.
You've got a list of ideas.
So let me know.
Let's go.
Yeah. I got so many weird theme shows we did in Wilmington.
Yeah. When I went to New York Comedy Fest, I was with Jackie, Eddie Cisneros' wife. Okay. And she was Angela's road manager for a long time. She's awesome. And we discovered very quickly our senses of humor very different. Like I was laughing at like the bullshit, and she was like, this is what you think is funny? And I was like, this is hilarious. And she's like, I don't understand what is happening. And it's like,
and that's what I love. Think so many people have different.
Yeah, I don't think either of us are wrong, but we were very
Yeah.
much like
That's the
laughing.
best part. Is it
It
nobody's right or
tickles you
wrong?
different ways. Yeah,
You know, you know me, big
I
Bluey
do know
fan.
you.
Like
Yes.
Bingo says, whatever makes my tail wag makes me happy. So
I feel like that's a sex thing, but I know you and
no,
I know
it's
it's
just a little
definitely
no,
not.
it's just a cartoon tail wag, you know, that's all. Just an
That's very
innocent
cute.
dog tail wag.
Are you going to the live show?
We're weighing our options. We don't want to be the two weirdos that didn't bring kids to the
You
live.
can bring Juniper. When is
Okay.
it happening?
She's gonna be like, leave me out of this. I think it's the beginning of June.
I don't know. Yeah, she might still. If she's still in
But
town,
this
you're welcome to
sucks.
bring her as a buffer if you need.
She's like, I'll be in the car. This is stupid.
Well, like what's so funny is like I had like tagged you and they're like, hey, there's a live Bluey show. And literally yesterday, one of my friends who lives in North Carolina, I guess they just came through there and she was there with her kids and they're little though. They're like 4 and 2 or something. I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, there it is.
There it is. There it is. It looks so bad that it's good though. So I'm intrigued.
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
I took her to the Peppa Pig version of that,
Okay.
where they're like on stage. It was at the Grand Ole Opry. Worst day of my life.
Oh
He
no.
was pretty into it.
Yeah. I think my mom took me to Sesame Street Live. So every
Oh, yeah.
generation has their thing, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm glad I missed out on the Blues Clues.
Yeah. I wasn't. I was too old for that.
Barney. My brother had Barney. I just had
My
Sesame.
brother was Barney in Blue's Clues. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, Kaylee, thank you so much. Where can people find you? Where can comics coming from out of town respectfully hit you up to do a show? What is the right process?
I think I have a reputation for being a bitch in that way because people are like, someone told me to never DM you. And I'm like, yeah, don't. I won't
don't
respond.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm not.
Everyone wants to know the booker's right process. So what is yours? How can people reach out to do your show?
On Dewey Comedy, there's an entire booking tab.
Look at that.
Submit your video. Give me your information. I will get to it eventually.
Yeah.
Hopefully before you've already come in my town. Sometimes that happens. I'm like going through and I'm like, oh you're here yesterday.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, great tape. Maybe
Yep.
next time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the easiest way for. Oh my god, dog. Hey,
he's just backing up your opinion. He's like, don't
he's just
mess this up.
He's my tough support system.
Yeah.
Yeah, just go to my website, deweycomedy.com. That's where everything is. Tickets,
Everything.
Calendars, how to contact me. I just get so frustrated with the DMs. And then if they DM me, it almost makes them not an option because I'm like, clearly you didn't read the bio where it says, don't DM me for booking consideration. If you can't read one sentence, how qualified are you to be funny on stage?
It's fair.
Like my whole thing is like, treat this like a job. Treat this like you're applying for a job. Like if you're trying to make a career out of this, show up like a professional. I hate the like, hey, what do you got? I'm like, fuck you.
Who are you?
I have a life.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just like show up. Like I interviewed 3 people for my 9 to 5 today. And I'm like, people suck. They do not know how to like make themselves hireable.
Yeah.
Give me a good tape.
That's ridiculous.
Use sentences and periods. Like it's pretty simple. I know not all creatives are like, focused and minded that way, but like if you want a career in this industry, you have to.
Yeah.
Or find someone who can do it for you.
People barely read your emails. They think they're going to read a poorly worded one.
Mm-mm. Or here's my other hot take. If comics want to know, send me a video link that's not in a Google Drive or a Dropbox folder that I've not been invited to.
Got to reach out a second time to get permission.
Yes, I'm not following up. If I can't get it to open, you shot your shot. Try again next month. Yeah. Like I will sometimes if I like think the person is, I'm like, okay, I would actually probably like to have this person. Do an unpublished YouTube and send me the link.
Yeah.
Period. Like that's where it can live. No one else has to see it. I prefer no one else has seen it except for the people you're sending. Stop sending me Google and Dropbox files I can't open. That's my
Yeah. I thought
my
you were going to say
advice.
people are just sending you Instagram reels. Be like, see? What's up?
I've seen no, that has happened.
Okay.
Or they'll be like, you can just see me on Instagram. I'm like,
Yeah,
bye.
No.
No.
You added more steps to this process. No, thank you.
Yeah, just be professional. I'm
Awesome.
not a bitch, but I do have standards.
I mean, you got to take care of yourself because you'll be run all over in this industry. Kaylee, thank you so much for joining us, giving us a little peek
Yeah.
behind the promoter curtain.
Thanks for
and yeah,
having me.
go check out some Dewey comedy shows here in Nashville. Catch her at her crazy shows in New York that she's planning. You know, that's fantastic.
Well, we don't know if that'll happen, but maybe.
Yeah.
I like here's where I go. I like spiral out way too far. I get way too ahead of myself. And I was already like, okay, I just need to have a Nashville tab on my website and a New York tab, and then I'll have all my New York shows on that account. And I was like, hey, let's get the show first.
Let's rate it
And
back.
then maybe find someone you trust to run it.
Well, thank you again.
Anyway.
Shout out to Project Nerd for having us as part of their family. Check out all their great content. Most importantly, hit that subscribe button, share us with your friends, and we will see you next time.
My funny friends, my funny friends, my funny, funky, funny friends now. My funny friends, my funny friends, my funny, funky, funny friends now.
Did Project Nerd make that?